Welcome back, everyone, to Jerry Exclusive, where we dive deep into the minds of extraordinary individuals. Today is a brand new type of video, though. You've never seen this one before. It's a longer video, but full of amazing gems. Because today, guys, we have an amazing expert in the field of psychology, a chartered psychologist and a fellow of the Higher Education Academy with multiple degrees, including a PhD and a wealth of experience across diverse sectors. He's a true expert in his field. Not to mention, he's actively shaping the future of psychology as a member of the British Psychology Society Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Board. But that's not all, guys, because Dr. Mia is also co-chairing the Decolonization Curriculum Group at the University of Sunderland, ensuring that the next generation of psychologists learn from the most inclusive and diverse perspectives. And if that's not impressive enough, he co-founded Our Minds Matter, a mental health charity that's making a real impact in faith communities. And he hosts the thought-provoking podcast called Psychology Cast. Plus, his website and social media channels are your go-to places for understanding complex psychology concepts. As you can tell, we're going to have an amazing conversation today. So don't go anywhere. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Jalal Mia. Make sure you subscribe, like, and share this video to anyone who you know is interested in psychology. But without further ado, let's get straight into the video. What does that mean?
Yeah. Basically, this is a Stroop test. So, can you see it's not really a blue square, it's a red circle. But can you see that the actual is a red circle?
Yeah.
But it's written blue square. So it's there to confuse people.
Oh.
So we don't see, sometimes we can't see stuff. But yeah, no, someone bought me that as a present, a Secret Santa present, and it's like a psychology mark. Yeah, even at the bottom there, you can see like some words are not in their colors.
Yeah, it confuses you a little bit. Yeah.
So the green is in blue, but it's actually not green.
Yeah.
But it's green. So it's how information can be hidden. And our brains can't see it, and you have to really decode and solve. Yeah. But I just thought I'd show that to you just on the podcast if you want, mate.
That's very interesting. I'm gonna add that right there at the front because when I first saw that, I was like, "Is that a mistake? Like, did they manufacture it wrong?"
Exactly.
Yeah,
That's what it's supposed to do. Like, you're supposed to like question.
Yeah. That's actually a great way to start the podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Jerry Exclusive. And today I have an amazing guest. This is actually my first time meeting him, and I'm gonna make sure I don't pronounce your name wrong. Dr. Jalal, right?
Yeah, that's fine. Jalal's fine. But yeah.
So we have Dr. Jalal on the podcast today. It's been a long time coming, but I'm very excited for today because we're gonna delve into some amazing topics. Now, Dr. Jalal, I have to say, you have like the most amazing resume ever. Like your CV, woo! Because I went on your LinkedIn, right, and I saw your bio, and it was just like accolade after accolade after accolade after accolade. So I kind of want to start with that. Like I want to delve deeper than that, but I want to start on that topic of like, where did that drive come from for you? Like, where did it start?
Well, first of all, thanks for your kind comments, Jerry. Like I sometimes I do think that it might appear like that, like in terms of that I've got these things, but to me it just feels like work and just like a normal thing, like in terms of like it's a normal day, and if you get focused in so much in the work that you forget about the actual how does it appear on the outside, like so we think about accolades and stuff like that. Yeah, you never really think about it. So thank you for mentioning it. Where does the motivation come from? I think that's a very deep question. Like, I think it needs like several answers. But I think where it comes from is, I think I saw the struggle, up in part of my upbringing, and I saw the struggle with my family, my parents, and I think I just wanted to make like a better life for them. And the only way I was going to do that is try to improve, sort of our socio-economic position. Because, we're from a background that poverty is quite deep. You know, we have to rely on benefits when we're younger, and it's the only way to survive. You know, my parents couldn't work because of their health, mental health problems. So I think I wanted to give them the best. Like, look, you know, I know we've got this, but let's see what I can do for them. And I think maybe it comes from like they migrated from Bangladesh, early like late 70s, 80s, and they made that big jump so we can live and have a better life. So what am I going to do? And so this is my way of like saying, look, okay, you made that big leap, big jump, big migration with all that. You left your language, you left your home, you left everything. So what I need to repay some of that, if you like,
Yeah.
in that way. I think reflecting on it, I think that's where it comes from. Like, if you asked me about 10 years ago, I wouldn't have that sort of insight. But I think being in the discipline, speaking to so many people about my own journey and reflecting, I think that's where it comes from. Like, I think just wanted to, because they made that effort, I feel it was my sort of like duty or responsibility to match them and to say, yeah, we appreciate the effort.
Yeah. So I'm guessing that was almost like a debt of love, kind of like, you've done all of this for me. The least I could do is kind of repay back all of that for all the hard work and, struggle that you've gone through. And so just building up on that, because a lot of stories about people who have come, through like, backgrounds who may be lower class or, middle class or, not just having, not the best background. A lot of these people, they kind of have this psychology of like, they kind of have this chip on their shoulder, or they kind of have like something to prove, maybe to themselves or their parents, and this usually drives them to find a way. Do you think this is one of the aspects, one of the things that drove you, or like, was it just something of like, I'm just gonna go out there and work my hardest and see where it goes, or was it a strategic like, you know what, I have this psychology, I have this mentality, I have this thing I'm going for, and I'm gonna go for it?
Yeah, another interesting question. I think my first answer would be like the one that comes to my head. That is, don't know what I'll think about it later on. I do think it's a lot to do with, yeah, we all talk about growing up as kids, right? We all have a code. We all, because I'm not the only person. Right? There's other people in our family and neighborhood, because we're brought up with like-minded situations, be like-minded people. And I think we all are striving to come out of poverty. Some people take unhealthy routes, and some of my, former, classmates, schoolmates, some of them ended up in prison because they were involved in, just say, in certain activities which were unhealthy. But I think they did it as no excuse, but I think they did it as a response to the socioeconomic condition. Like, they're trying to provide for the family, and sometimes they don't have it, and so they go for the easy, for the options that are available to them in that sense. The drugs and the fraud and that sort of game. And sometimes, I learned, like, because I grew up with people, like, meaning, in your young age, they're not bad people. Like, there's a deep connection with
Yeah.
certain things, but because of the coming from that background that we're deprivation, and not many people going to university, not many people going to I don't know, even business perhaps, and the one business. So there's a lot of role modeling going on, and the ones that do make the money, the ones who do improve their position on their life for quality of life and survival, were actually unhealthy role models. The people who would be selling drugs and, let's just say, doing unhealthy things. And so I had a choice, like, in that moment of like, I think in a way it's a blessing, because like my family's health kept me away from that path, because I had no choice. I'm like, yeah, I can't be dabbling in this game. I need to dabble in this game, which is like helping. And I think it really shaped my sort of values, and kind of was of a natural path. Like, I don't I think when, like I said, when you asked me when I was younger, I didn't think that at the time. I think out of circumstances, that because I was spending more time in hospitals and reading leaflets and translating information to health professionals between the time, I think it informed my world opinion about what I was going to do subconsciously.
Yeah.
So I think in a sense, like my family's situation, my parents' health, if you like, it was actually a blessing in disguise in a sense. I know I take the positives out of it, but I think it took me away from the other path where my peers, not all my peers went down that path, but the peers I did grow up with, like, when we used to kick about with the football and, like after school and on the weekends, some of them, and one or two of them are not with us anymore, like because they've overdosed and they've been caught up in that sort of game, really long time ago. But I think it's a circumstantial, like the circumstance and the environment, life events just pulled you in that direction. And I was exposed to like, oh, so this is how we can make it better. This is how we can make a difference. So I started to engage in that way.
Yeah.
So in school, I wasn't that literate in school, like in high school and stuff.
Yeah.
But I was more, because of the stuff they were teaching me about, I became more literate when it came to, the health information, because I have to understand them.
Yeah.
So there's a bit of evolutionary that I have to understand it, and you gotta focus.
Yeah. So it was kind of a selective attention. Like these things they're teaching me in school, they might be important, but I really need to focus on these ones because of my parents and stuff like that.
Yeah, because it was life and death,
Yeah.
If you don't do anything right, like, as you might know and you might come across, that if you don't intervene, if you don't, this is your life, It's that song, isn't it? I don't know if you've heard of it. Tracy Chapman, Fast Car. We gotta make. There's a lyric in there. There's a phrase. We gotta make a decision. Otherwise, we leave, or we leave tonight, or we die this way. And because I think music and stuff like that at the time, younger, like it shapes your your emotions, understands your emotions, because you don't have the vocabulary. That's why a lot of people like when they listen to music, because it validates their thoughts.
Yeah.
But Tracy Chapman at the time, Fast Car,
Yeah.
there was a lyric in there. I'm thinking, yeah, it's life and death.
I might check that out. I might add it to my
Yeah,
playlist or
definitely.
something, just to get me pumped up before the gym. But yeah, as you were talking about, your childhood and stuff, I was wondering where did you grow up? Like in London or maybe abroad or?
Oh, so I'm from now I'm working in the northeast up in West Sunderland, but I'm originally born in and spent most of my life there in a place called Luton. So it's not far from London. And Luton's, I think, is about 56%, which is a diverse, super diverse borough. So that's how much diversity there is. And it was great because, people come from all sorts of backgrounds, right? And, you grew up with them, you work with them. And so you don't see those differences. You actually see the very, where there are a lot of similarities about values, about people just want to live a peaceful life. That's what it is. They just want to go about their business, live a peaceful life, and have less problems. Like, and it doesn't matter where you're from. So I think we speak about 120 languages in our town.
Wow.
So when you go to places like Nando's and stuff like that, you'll see different people talking different way, but you don't feel threatened.
Yeah.
It's actually quite nice. Like, yeah, people are just enjoying themselves, and you're enjoying your time with your family and your friends.
Yeah.
So there are definitely positive influences that I've had in my life about speaking to and spending time with people, and you learn about how they see the world. I think that influenced me as a psychologist.
Yeah. Definitely. That's exactly what I was gonna move on to, because you're talking to me about all these experiences, and I can't help but wonder, somehow, somewhere, these experiences definitely accumulated to like help you be better at your job as a psychologist, because you kind of had an insight already. Like you talked about your friends, people who you kick football around with, some of them passing away. This definitely must have had like a mind altering effect on you.
Yeah, because so it's varied. Like on the first point, yeah, absolutely, it definitely informs your work. Having these experiences, because it's a human, area that we're working in with humans, right? So working with humans, any interaction with humans helps that bringing your social understanding, even your own identity. So what I do at the moment is a variety of things, but predominantly I work in university settings in higher education, and that involves a lot of teaching and a lot of supervising and providing a lot of, let's just say, pastoral support. I call it it's mental well-being, but mental well-being is also learning and getting them to think about their future. So pastoral support is about supporting these students. And I have a lot of students from ethnic minorities, Black and Asian students mainly, come up to me and ask me advice about how to, solve a particular situation, address a certain situation, but also their future. Like, what do I do? How do I get a job? How do I make the most out of this degree? So a lot of it's focusing on teaching and providing information to students, like because what I've learned is by working in so many different settings before then taking this full-time position in university, is like you can draw on those experiences and tell it to students and say, because for me, I do the application of psychology. For me, that's a big thing. Like, if I'm learning this thing, how am I going to use it?
Yeah.
How will it help me? How will it help my family? How will it help my community? How will it help my neighborhood? So it's the application of psychology for me is important. Like, okay, if we're going to be doing this thing, how do we use it? I'm a child health psychologist, so I basically focus on health-related, meaning things like access to services is my big thing. So I look at particular groups, why they can't get into services. Is it something wrong with the group population, or is it something wrong with our services?
Yeah.
Normally it's both, but predominantly it's something wrong with our services. The services are not accessible for that population, cannot speak the right language. But and I mean language not just in terms of syntax, but you got to know about this, the commonalities between this group,
Yeah.
the values, the cultures they bring. So I do a bit of like negotiating with health providers in local authority. For example, you might work in partnership settings as part of the university and say, yeah, so we've seen this data, for example, the life expectancy is here, or it could be that not many people are accessing your services here, we've noticed. Could you explain a bit why? And then for me as a researcher also, we'll say, okay, let's investigate that as a researcher, explore the psychological barriers or the systematic barriers, like why they can't get in. And same with education, health and education. That's the reason why I've been involved in education, is because they're very similar in terms of the problems. So when people ask me what do I do, I think it's very hard because you do a bit of everything. You do a bit of teaching, research, a bit of clinical work, one-to-one work with people. I don't do that as because it can be quite time-consuming, that one, and energy. It requires a lot of focus when you're working with clients one-to-one, and I want to give it the best quality, isn't it? So that's why I take on fewer clients. So you're able to do it, and then because you've got the day job as well, like the teaching side to it. So if anyone wants to pursue this path, just let them know. It's quite varied, but I think I've ended up in education because you're training the next generation.
Yeah.
That's where I'm spending my time in.
Yeah, that's amazing. Like the way you do, because I used to think maybe this is an old school way of looking at a psychologist. I used to think is what you see in the movies. You go into a nice clean room and you have the psychologist sitting on one side, the client on the other side, and they just speak back and forth for a couple of hours, and then they have a notebook, and then the client leaves at the end of the day. But it's actually interesting to know that there's different areas, like you teaching. You're also in public health, like we said, in education and different aspects, which all help with the application of psychology in different concepts as well. So with that being said, we're going to take a quick 2-minute break.
This video is sponsored by HardX365. Tune in on Instagram to get healthier and fitter, both mentally and physically. Now let's get back to the episode.
I remember you spoke about Luton, right? That's where you grew up and, you used to play football. And I was just wondering, I'm guessing you're a Luton fan or?
Yes, I mean, I know they're in the Premier League now, right? And so where my family is actually around the stadium. My family face opposite the stadium, the away stand.
Oh, okay.
So when you see those pictures and stuff like that, yeah, we're literally on that road. And so we're right in the hub, and we used to play football around the grounds.
Yeah.
So when there were non-league and stuff, we would play next in the car parks. because we have not much green space, and what you do as kids, you want to play football. So a lot of our friends would spend after school up to sometimes up until about 9 o'clock in the evening. Would play five-a-side. We'll play coxes. We'll play this. We'll play that game. One bounce, one touch. These these games. And it was around the club, like around the stadium, because there was nowhere else for us to go. And so we play in the little alleyways, and yeah, that's how it was.
You're literally speaking my language right now. All that one bounce, one touch stuff.
One bounce, touch, yeah.
Like playing in the street. That's my childhood in a nutshell. But I was just asking because I'm a Man U fan and we're struggling right now. This whole start of the season is extremely shaky. I'm thinking about switching to Man City in a minute because we're just struggling a lot. But yeah, I was actually, when you were talking about that, I just realized, like, obviously I'm a lot younger than you, but a lot of the things that you went through in your childhood, I feel like was the same for me because with the football stuff, growing up as well, like I used to play in the streets or like late at night. My parents would have to force me to come home every night.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, but I feel like those were the best moments, like those type of childhoods where you're just adventurous, were like the best moments. But in the modern age, like 2023 kind of, that's a lot harder for children to experience that just because of safety concerns or social media and stuff like that. Do you think that's maybe something that parents should try to go back to, or is there like a middle line where we can still have children experiencing that while at the same time being a little bit more safe with themselves?
Yeah, I think with that is the landscape is changing, so you cannot compare it. It's impossible, like meaning because stuff that exists today doesn't exist in that time. So, and sometimes when we know that a methodology or a thing that has worked, kept us safe, done this, we feel secure and safe. So we naturally rely on those past examples and say, look, we need to go back and we need to do like this. I think what we got to do is like we have to go with the environment changes, embrace them, and say, all right, how are we going to survive in this? It's not in a bad way, but I think it's up to the how we did it, survived. Now it's their turn to survive. Yeah, we can provide direction, and it enables the children to become more independent when they become into adulthood, to say, look, the world is a nasty place out there. It's not pleasant in some spaces. There are pleasant people and there are pleasant scenarios, but don't forget there's this other dark side to it. And so you're better off preparing your kid, both in an optimistic front, but more in a realistic sense. So if there is if they want to interact, and plus technology is more evident, more prominent now. So people don't want to come out and interact. And social interaction, I think it's important for development. It's sort of that football thing, that connecting, that passing, that bit of joy, a bit of stress and stress relief, something to look forward to, all those things. Now we're living in a different age and different environment. I think we're going to start seeing how children craft out their own strategy on oh, this is how we did it. And we will learn about that in about probably 5-6 years time. How we're learning about what we did. It's going to come out from them. So this is how they did in terms of technology, and this is how they did. But yeah, the accessibility to certain things which aren't healthy, it's more quicker now, isn't it? So as long as you have apps, for example, to order food, just the Deliveroo, whatever, you have to, there's positives to that, living in that fast pace, but there's also a negative side to it, which is well, what about the people who do unhealthy stuff? If they're going to use the same technology, why wouldn't they? It's business for them in their heads. So I think it's a natural occurrence of the environment in terms of the social interactions.
Definitely. I'm also, interested to see, like you said, in 5 to 6 years time where that goes as well. Because I feel like this is something that I've been really interested in. I don't know if this is maybe part of your expertise or something that you can touch on, but everything you spoke about, it relates to this one term. I've been watching a couple of YouTube videos, and this one term keeps cropping up, which is overstimulation, and which is, where what you were talking about, having quick access to all of these things can kind of have problems with just overstimulation and stunt your development in some kind of way. And on top of that, I want to also ask like a controversial question. A lot of my friends have been speaking about this, and like we had a conversation the other day where we were like, people who have ADHD are just using that as an excuse to say that they can't focus, like just using an excuse. What are your thoughts on, first of all, like the overstimulation kind of problem and how that can be solved, and also ADHD? Is that just like not for all people, but for some people, does that come from just being lazy, not being able to focus, or is there more to that than we know about?
Yeah, the first point is ergo stimulation. Because it's not my area, but I do understand the impact of it. Meaning, like we have to really pay attention to, because we don't know what conditions are going to occur later on. We'll find out through research. This is how it works. They'll find out, okay, remember we did all this thing stimulation, now it's causing this. So how we find out research today is about something happened 20 years ago. So I think we will find out more and more the effects. I think we have to be careful around, like when, for example, when babies are born, we have this technology around them. It can be a bit overpowering, and what happens to the brain. So we do have to put in a level of training for parents, perhaps, to say, look, here's the risks and here's the dangers to it. This is what you can do. I think that will really help them, equipping the public, equipping that part of the population. Say, all right, look, you can't stop technology, but here's what we can do to be aware of the safeties around it. I think so. Always making sure the power is within the people. That's very, very important, and not with technology, not with authorities, and the equal power is between the citizens and the people who are living, right? And the second point is like, yeah, I do think with the ADHD, I think sometimes it can help. I think it can help open a conversation. That's the best way to approach it. So when someone says that, rather than coming from a point of like judging them and saying, right, this is wrong and this is right, you're this and you're that, because that can create isolation, you're saying, what are you telling me that for? Something's bugging you. Okay, cool. Let's not judge. Let's be curious and ask questions. So you're telling me this thing. Is this a sign to say you want help? That's cool. Like, let's not judge. Like, all right, look, if you want help, of course we're gonna help. I'm a nice person, and this is civilized conversation. Of course, trust is important here. So I think that's the best way. When I used to, I did point, I'm going to point out, like, before coming to university in the job market, full time, I did do PhD and stuff like that, but I did do practice work. And one of a lot of time I spent in prison healthcare, working with men, working with inmates, and a lot of them had a lot of conditions, because when we do the health assessment forms and stuff like that, it comes up. And I always ask like people, like I don't like go from the position you're lying to me. I go from the position, what are you telling me? Do you want me to help you with something? Okay. So I think it's a great way of like a conversational, starter, like removing those barriers, because you don't know what else might be happening, and they might be using the ADHD, the labeling, as a front for other things. And
Yeah,
you're thinking, thanks for sharing that with me. I believe you. I trust you. You've told me that.
yeah,
And really putting the onus back on the individuals about the truth and say, look, but what do you want? Do you want to live a lie? Do you want to live a truth? And having that conversation with them, they're like, of course I want to speak the truth. Yeah, because now they've got someone who's going to help them, rather than this masking and this thing like they're doing. Like, no, I think it can be like a bridge, and to have that conversation to go and help. I don't know if that answered the question, but that's how I would
yeah.
approach the conversation.
Yeah, 100%. That's actually very valuable. And basically you're saying just no judgment, just go in there, just observe, basically, be balanced, be just hear them, without reacting and stuff like that. Which I feel like is very important, obviously, not just for if you're speaking to clients, but when you're speaking to your friends as well, just anyone in general. Like, I don't know what your take is on, using YouTube videos to learn about psychology, because there's a lot of content out there. Like, there's these motivational YouTube videos that are like, you have to do this every morning to prime your brain. This is what Stoics do. This is what you do to become the strongest mental master and stuff like that. What's your take on, such videos for educating yourself about psychology, do you think it's mostly negative and overdone, like a lot just extra, or do you think there's some valuable takeaways that you can get from that?
Yeah, like I said, I think it's an excellent question, by the way. I think because I did a lot of psychology videos and do it on social media and places like that, and I know a lot of people who do. And and some people have stopped now because it's too tiring, it's too engaging, and some people are carrying on. But I think it's really, first of all, like some point out that YouTube creators, I think it's so encouraging. Like they're trying to improve their situation. They're doing it like because they want to change something or trying to help people or build a business for them. I think it should be like they shouldn't be shamed for that. They shouldn't be like good. Like how do we harness that? Like these people want to contribute. They want to help the world. They're using a lot of time and effort and energy because I know what it takes to create a video. Even
Yeah,
a 5-minute video, the amount of concentration, the cutting and the editing, it's not easy. And I rate that person's like drive, and they're going to be a success, whatever they do. The second point is like the content. I think it's important to have different voices. I think like how people explain psychology. So like the way I explain it, not everyone's going to get it, but you need to have the others. That's why it's important for diversity to have a diverse way of like teaching, because people relate to content and people in different ways, and we should allow for everyone. So that's why I mean the third point on that is I think for the audience, I think it's up to the audience to take some responsibility and like, okay, who is this person? Meaning, are they credible? Are they using the right sources? That's why in university we say look for citations and say look, go for what we call academic integrity. When
yeah,
you're giving off information, point to the references. So you don't have to be qualified, but point to the references. That's what our students would say, look, in your essay and in reports and like, try to put it together. So people then, people are really informed, because you don't want to cause damage to the individual by leading up to in the wrong pathway.
yeah,
You don't want to do that, because that person, that audience member, might end up in a very unhealthy situation because of your advice, because of your interventions. That's why I mean, so always be informed. Use citations is the best way to
um,
say this study said this and this thing said that,
right,
and then give the reference list inside the YouTube description, and it's up to the people. Always put a disclaimer on, of course, to say this isn't a space
yeah,
for you to get mental health support. If you want to get support, here's go to this website, whatever.
yeah,
So I think being an educator or content creator, we do have like, because I do psychology media module at the university, and when we go through these lectures and assessments, one of them is to come up with a media piece. One of the big thing I want them to apply is ethics. I apply ethics, like because people respect you over time. You give them good advice, give them good direction. They feel inspired by your content. So when there's so much around, I think there's space for everybody, of course, but make sure you're doing the citations and following ethics with
yeah,
your content, and then people buy into you. And then not just now, but it's not just about creating content today. It's like this content will be used in 2 years' time,
yeah,
because the new students will be coming. And so if you can create a whole library of stuff, like to say that here's some stuff, but I think it needs to be organized.
yeah,
Because remember that we said about stimulation, because you have so much what's going on.
yeah,
You can when you're creating learning materials. That's what essentially what it is. What I've learned by teaching at university is structuring the content. Because remember, people are humans. You can't just shout at them. You have to like break it down, because remember, this is a person who's like you, who's trying to code it structure by step. So, be mindful and be respectful of that. That they may be coming for the answers.
yeah,
They might be coming for the truth. At least break it down for them, make it easy for them, make
yeah.
it accessible for them. I think education is so liberating if it's done in the right way.
Yeah, 100%. And I definitely understand what you're talking about when you say, there's so much out there, for people to delve into. It's like a whole ocean. Like, and I don't know if you've heard of the saying where we've only explored like 5% of the ocean and the rest is
Yeah,
not, that's basically social media and YouTube. There's just so much out there to absorb. And, it's important to kind of take your time to pick the ones that you feel like benefit you the most. And, there's been this kind of trend of this psychological videos or motivational videos that always relate to these, you know, these personalities, these famous like thinkers, or I don't know what the term is, but I'm gonna use thinkers like Aristotle's and Hippocrates and, you know, Socrates and what's the other guy, Marcus Aurelius and stuff like that. Do you think using these people as a reference, you know, these people who are alive thousands and thousands of years ago, like, do you think using their teachings is relatable and beneficial for the modern age? Do you think there's something we can learn from there, or do you think maybe we should move away from that slightly and kind of use more modern empirical evidence about psychology to kind of inform us on how we should learn about psychology?
Well, I think it's a really good question. I think it's a hard one to answer. Like, I'm just thinking about the answer. What would you say? I think it's probably a bit of both, if I'm honest. But I think with the, you know, if you think about the historical figures, I think we got to get the facts right. Because the reason why, what I mean by that is, like, we have to look at, well, did they really tell us? And, you know, and where did they get their information from? Because if you look at that part of the history, you're thinking they've studied in Africa.
Yeah.
So let's get that bit right first. You know, let's tell the audience the truth, so they're properly informed. To say, did they get the inspiration from the Africans? You know, not the Greeks. So the Greeks connected with the, you know, that part of the Africa. They went and studied there, and for some reason, like that, you know, that seems to be deleted from history. And I think that's a very important part. So I think we can learn from them as long as we are informed correctly. Otherwise, we are going to be going down this road again of, like, you know, where's the gaps, and we try to say, okay, well, history started here. No, history started over there.
Yeah.
Let's get it right first. And normally it goes back to those power structures. Like, and even them, they want the history to be corrected. Of course, when you do so much work, you want to, like, I went through all this effort. The least I want to do is make sure we get the facts straight, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I think it's a duty to, you know, people like them to say, look, we will speak your truth. You know, it's a duty. So it's not like an attack. It's a way of, like, you know, a collaborative process. And then you need modern. I think modern is hard because some people, because, you know, they're so, you know, age range, like some people might not like them, and then they're like, but because they're so far away that we don't have any emotional connection to them,
Yeah.
therefore it's easy to use, if you like, easy to understand. But if someone's who's, you know, age range,
Yeah.
you can relate to, that can be quite triggering. And so, and it's not as safe. So I think sometimes people use historical stuff. It means, oh, yeah, you can talk about that person because that person's dead now.
Yeah.
You see,
Yeah.
it's not going to be a comeback in that sense.
Yeah.
And hence why I think when it comes to, like, things like people who've done, you know, historical abuses, if you like, they only come out afterwards because not many people want to talk about it because it's too triggering, or it's too going to cause too much problems, and it's too dangerous. That's the word to use. But once someone's dead and gone,
Yeah.
then we're able to process, and everything comes out a bit, you know. And you
Yeah.
think to yourself, is it something us in humans that we do this? Like, we tend not to engage with people and, you know, content.
Yeah.
Because it's too close to us, and we don't want to process that right now, but we'll process it in a different age.
Yeah, 100%. Like with the triggering stuff, I feel like that's 100% true because, like, I've been reading a lot of articles, just social media and stuff, and you always hear about this comparison illness where people always feel like they have to compare, or they always feel like they have to level up with someone on social media or something. So I guess that kind of links into the same concept of if that person was alive today, you would kind of, you'd be a little bit triggered because maybe you might compare with them, or you might feel some sort of, you know, emotions that stops you from actually learning the lessons. So that's actually interesting what you touched on. And I was gonna ask you as well about this idea of being nonchalant, because I was speaking about it with a friend yesterday, and we were just trying to delve into like what the real, because a lot of the time, I'm sure you might have learnt about this as well, like a lot of the time stuff that might seem surface level is actually not the problem. Like most times the real problem is like a want for connection. Like most issues, like you might feel angry that someone left their shoes on your couch or something, but the real problem is that you want to connect with that person. You want that person to understand you on a deeper level. So the shoe on the couch, yeah, that's a surface level problem, but if there's connection, then the shoe on the couch is kind of negligible compared to that, because the problem will get automatically solved because you just feel like there's a lack of connection. So with the nonchalant question, I just wanna, ask if maybe you've done any studies on this or anything to kind of indicate where this emotion or this personality trait of being nonchalant comes from, because it's actually a very trending like thing on social media. A lot of people always complain like, oh, my parents are nonchalant, my boyfriend, my girlfriend is nonchalant. Like, where do you think this originates from?
I mean, do you mean like is it like when is it? Do you mean in the concept that when someone is feeling calm? Like, is that what you mean? Like when nonchalant? Is that a state? Is that what we're saying?
I mean it in the sense of like almost like a trait which someone expresses, maybe intentionally or unintentionally, where they just don't react, not even react, they
Yeah,
just
yeah.
don't engage. Yeah,
I know what you mean. Yeah, I think it's where does it come from? I suppose it can come from upbringing. Upbringing, right? You know, when you see like other people doing, so when something really bad happens and they're very relaxed about it, like not a nonchalant, sorry, what's that? Yeah, trying to get the words out now.
nonchalant. Yeah,
Yeah, it's one of those like, you know, it's a social like conditioning, like we learn from the others, like this is how to deal with a particular stressful situation, and then other people will see it in that way because they haven't developed the skill of dealing with that, and they will, you know, and just say stigmatize, use a bit of stigma, shame the other person for saying, oh, you're so nonchalant, if you like,
yeah,
about this, right? And I do think it's I don't know if it's a coping mechanism. It could be. That's why I would like to think like it's a set position if we're talking about in the point of like how someone approaches. So they have a nonchalant way of dealing with things, that they seem to be peaceful, relaxed, and you know they're not reactive. They're not going 100 miles an hour. It's the opposite.
yeah,
So I think it could be a learned behavior, either through social conditioning from another person, or the fact that. But the fascinating thing is like how other people see it. Or you have this thing about it and they stigmatize you for it. Like, no, that's probably their way. Like they're not. There's no negative thing about it. This is how they react to a situation.
yeah,
So they give this labeling because it could be a form of insecurity for that person because they haven't developed that what's that strategy or coping mechanism. So they try to, instead of trying to put the focus on that you know inability, they
yeah,
put the focus on that person who's doing that,
yeah,
and therefore you know it's like so shifting the focus.
yeah,
And that's where I think is fascinating when people talk about this thing. I'm like, well, the person is just reacting to the environment. There is stimulus, there's an environment, they're reacting. What's the problem?
yeah,
If it's not causing anyone harm. But when someone tries to come and, you know, put a label on it,
yeah,
you're thinking, why is that happening? Why are you doing that for? Like, and why are you paying attention to that? Is it because you don't know how to do it yourself? And that's the reason. Okay, well, you're not going to say that, isn't it? Oh, like, I don't know how to do it. So sometimes I think people do it as a way of like shaming others, of reacting and protecting themselves because they haven't learned it. But then saying that, some people will be about it because some people will just use that strategy because they don't want anyone else to know that they don't know how to deal with it. So they will just appear to be that way, but underneath they'll be like 100 miles an hour. Like, what the hell's going on?
yeah,
So I think it can be a bit of both. And it's interesting about the labeling theory, the labeling approach. Where does that all come from? Like, I think it's probably not helpful to label people because they're placing them in these boxes, and you know, and suddenly they become like oppressed by using that labeling.
yeah,
And you're thinking to yourself like, well, who are you to oppress me?
yeah,
Like, hang on, when did you become my equal, you
yeah,
know, or over equal, and all this stuff? Like, where did that go out of the conversation? Like, where did that go out of the understanding? So I think when you're talking about this labeling, you got to think about, well, who is doing the labeling? And same with colonization. I do a lot of decolonization work here at the university.
Yeah.
And I always ask my partners and my colleagues and students and say, well, always consider it from the point of view, are you a colonizer or are you colonized? Like, we have to get it right. Like, who, like when we're talking about certain things, like which camp are we in? So I think labeling in that sense, it does help, like when we push different perspectives, but we must consider both, like the different ways and what's happening here. But yeah, going back to the labeling is, I think it's when people, it tells us more about the individual who's doing the labeling.
Yeah.
Like when someone says, "Oh, you're so nonchalant about your approach," "Oh, you're so relaxed," or another one is like blasé.
Yeah.
So the blasé could be like a blanket, just a term, just to buffer, isn't it? It's like a buffer. YouTube has buffering. Videos have buffering.
Yeah.
So if when they're buffed up that way, I think in 10 minutes, that's another a phrase or terminology to explain why someone might be masking. So it could be seen as buffering, like they haven't, they're still loading up, but they're giving this relaxed perception to reassure the other person, say it's cool, it's fine. So it could be a mental health strategy in that sense.
Yeah. Wow.
I don't know if that was useful, but it's a different way of a psychologist's way of answering the question.
Yeah, that's exactly what we want. Like, wow, that's a new kind of perspectives of seeing it in terms of like, maybe it's about you, maybe you're just expanding yourself onto someone else. And I never really looked at it that much from that perspective. So thank you for that. I'm gonna start, consciously kind of thinking about everything, like maybe this is me doing that, not them. It's kind of an important way, I think, to kind of, stop that label.
We have this phrase. We have this phrase. I used it yesterday in our induction here at the university. I said we are mirrors of each other, like meaning that's what we are. So when we see other people, they are reflecting back onto us, and vice versa. So we're mirrors. To say, that's why it's important to practice boundaries and all these things, because when someone comes, they can make us feel uncomfortable because they can remind us about who we are and what we're doing. Sometimes it can be validating, and sometimes it can be invalidating. Like, like what am I doing with my life? Or another person comes along, oh, so we're so connected.
Yeah.
So I think like we are mirrors of each other in that sense. With a lot of transference going on. That's why self-awareness is the key to protecting your state of mind and well-being, and having boundaries.
Yeah, it definitely is. 100%. Literally, everything you've just said, I'm just like, I'm gonna start using this in my life a bit more. But with that being said, we're gonna take a quick 2-minute break, and then we'll be right back.
This video is sponsored by Jerry Exclusive. Check out the TikTok channel for loads of entertainment and fun. Back to the episode.
Dr. Jalal, we're back after the break. Now, we've spoken a lot about, psychological concepts and stuff like that, which I feel like it's going to be very beneficial and educational for the people who are watching. But I kind of want to switch the focus of the conversation a little bit. I want to talk a bit about you and kind of your progression and sort of your ventures and what you've been able to accomplish, and, just delve into what it is exactly that has led up to that and what exactly you do. Because like I said, you have a very accomplished CV. I wish my CV was as much as yours, which obviously shows that you're very experienced in what you do. And I just want to kind of let the people know a little bit more about how you've been able to kind of delve into these things. So I want to start with so you graduated in psychology to become a chartered psychologist, right? Which I don't know if it's the similar as in finance, because in finance we have a chartered financial accountant. Is that kind of a similar concept where you kind of get like you join a fellowship when you do that?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that, but the financial pathways. But the psychology one, yes, it's a legal protected status. So once if I was to simplify, you do a degree in which is a degree in psychology. It can be in different areas of psychology, as long as it's accredited by the British Psychological Society. That's as long as the degree, that 3-year degree, is accredited by them. That gives you status, like to register later on as a psychologist, but you need more training to become a psychologist. So I did. Normally, you might need a master's and some further training. Then you can apply for child psychologist status if you do the training programs, or you do an undergrad and then you become. You do an undergrad, you can do a doctorate, so you don't need to do a master's because you might already be at that level. Then after you've done your doctorate, you can apply for child psychologist. And then there's different pathways, other programs where you might become I think it's about 11 different types of psychologists. Clinical psychologist, educational psychologist, health psychologist, which is what I am, occupational psychologist, sports psychologist. You specialize later.
Right.
So the industry, if they want you for a job, they know, okay, well, what are you trained in? And, do you have a level of competence? And that's sort of like training behind you so we can feel confident putting you in front of our patients, in front of our teams. And so that's where the training pathways, and it's going to develop, like it's not absolute. Like there's other disciplines coming about. There's coaching psychologist. Some are protected by what we call the Healthcare Professions Council, so the HSPC.
Okay.
So that's another award. That's kind of another body, if you like, who's giving you the stamp and to say, yep, you're at that level. You're given your qualifications, so you can apply for that status, and you can be what we call a practitioner. And they give you the title of practitioner psychologist.
Okay.
So it's interesting when you qualify as a psychologist, you hold many titles. So I'm a child health psychologist.
Yeah.
And also a practitioner psychologist.
Yeah.
But if you were to do clinical, then you'll be a clinical psychologist, not child clinical psychologist, and then you still have practitioner psychologist if you do HSPC. So it becomes very interesting once you post that qualification, because now it starts to specialize, because the job market, the employer, the industry, they are looking for certain standards. They know that what this patient needs or what their service needs. So therefore, when they put these calls out for adverts in the job market, they want to have X, Y, and Z. But in fact, it's an interesting fact. Anybody can, in the UK, anybody can call themselves a psychologist. It's not legally protected.
Wow.
Even a psychology degree, by the way. Yes. Because it's not protected title. The only protected title, there's certain protected title like health psychologist, clinical psychologist. Like legally, you cannot use that without the registration. But psychologist, anybody can use it. Even my dad can use it.
Wow. So
it's not legally protected yet. I don't think it will be, but anybody can call themselves a psychologist legally. There's no legal protection around that title. It's only when it becomes child psychologist protected. And then the different domains like health psychologist, clinical psychologist, sports psychologist. And I think there's occupational psychologists and others that are protected, that you cannot call yourself that. But the psychologist in general, so if someone wants to put psychologist, no one can say anything.
Wow.
At the moment, it's 2023, no one can say anything like, that's not protected. I didn't know that until, about 2-3 years ago. I'm like, and so I wonder why that is sometimes concealed from us. Maybe because they, don't want to flood the market, because people start giving bad advice and then it can undermine the profession. So that's the other bit they're going to be careful of. Like, if you start, everyone's call them psychologists, it can undermine. Oh yeah, don't listen to psychologists. I listen to a psychologist and he or she did this, or they did this, right? So that's what I mean about legal protection, is that think about not undermining the discipline, because it's there to help people. And we do get, I don't think it's like commonplace, but we do get people who've done some horrific things. Like I think with that psychologist, this is in I don't know if they're British and American ones, but a few years ago they were part of designing torture for military, and you think to yourself like, no, that's not what psychologists should be doing. Like but they got struck off. They found out this is immoral, is inhumane. The whole point of studying humans is to help, not to torture, not to persecute, not to, we shouldn't be calling ourselves a disciplined psychologist to hurt people. That's not that's barbaric. Like that's quite
Yeah.
very inhumane.
Yeah.
And so we should be studying psychology to understand and to assist people. That's what it should be used for. Otherwise, it's very perverted. Like it's a form of torture. Come on, but people have the right to their own mind and body. You know, we shouldn't be intervening in that space. Like
Yeah.
historically, we've done that. And you think to yourself, like, well, you can't criticize them if we're doing the same.
Yeah.
We are the same as them if we're doing that. Like, no, you know. And the way we learn from people's pain and misery and loss and trauma is that so it doesn't happen again. Otherwise, why are we learning about that history? What's
Yeah.
the point? The whole point of history is so we learn the lessons. That's the whole thing.
Yeah.
You know
100%.
what I mean? Like that's so for me. That's even other psychologists will agree. Like that's why we like the Holocaust. Like we learn about that, so we never
Yeah.
do such things ever again. Like who that? What was that? The
Yeah.
way we as humans did it, and that was you know an important lesson, very important lesson. So, and you think to yourself, well, why are we learning about that? Yeah, it's because not to do it again.
So we don't repeat those mistakes. Yeah. 100%.
Yes.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if we're not doing it for that, we're watching as an entertainment, which is something really, really dark,
Yeah.
like messed up.
Yeah.
Thinking, why would you watch like that? Like just for your own amusement. You're either watching it for entertainment or education.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I know what camp I'm in. That like I'm absolute in that one. Like yeah, that you know,
Yeah.
because it's painful watching these things, you know. So we have to watch it to help us.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. So I want to also know what motivated you to pursue 2 doctorates and like
Yeah.
in that process, what do you think was your most challenging academic, you know, problem or something that you faced like a barrier?
This is a tough one, and but I'm glad I can share it like in this space because I think people might find it useful. But the reason why I did 2 doctorates, people from our backgrounds, the opportunities are less. Like, what do? You can't pick a fight. You can't, you know, start anything because they'll call you aggressive. They call you all these things, right? So what do? I'm going to get all the qualifications. It's the
Yeah.
only way. And
Yeah.
when you look at the numbers and the data, you realize that it's not a myth that we have to work harder.
Yeah.
And so I did it to get myself a job. Like 1 doctorate was not enough. I know it's sad, and you know that's the reason why I'm in this field now, to help it make it easy for the others coming through.
Yeah.
So you know you don't need 2 doctorates to get a job. Like, but I did it because I needed a job.
Yeah.
Like I know that might sound like what 1 doctorate is not enough. Like no,
No,
we need
yeah,
2.
I fully
And
understand.
I need 2. And I know people who are going for the 3rd and 4th doctorates because it's still not enough. Very sad. Like they're putting themselves to that pain, but because of systematic barriers in terms of getting employment, the doors are not going to open like easy for us.
Yeah.
You know,
Exactly.
you know, we're just seen as some other like you know, the othering, isn't it? Just because we look different, we speak different, we might appear different, whatever. So we have to get these qualifications. So when you're sitting at the table, you know, with the others,
Yeah.
you're saying, yeah, I've got this experience, I've got that qualification, got this, and then now we can now compare and say,
Yeah.
right, what do you want to do? So the data, if you like, speaks now for itself, and then it's up to the person to decide. And you know, if they're going for someone else who's less qualified,
Yeah.
less experienced, and you just think to yourself, well, thank you for revealing me. I'm not going to complain, but thank you. I don't work. I don't want to work with such human beings who think like that.
Yeah.
But reward me for that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's actually quite safe to know. It's like, yeah, if you can't see my value, I wouldn't want to work with you
Yeah.
because it's going to be a waste of time for both of us, right? And so I think it helps. I think that's what. So part of it's that about facing the realities that our families have prepared us. Look, the world isn't for us. We're always at that ladder. So you need to go out there, be honest, stay true to your values, be authentic, be nice, work hard, and you'll be fine.
Yeah.
There's guarantees. So this is what I mean. So there's that bit. I forgot the second part of your question.
Yeah. Just
What was
so I wanted
the
to know
barriers?
what was the most challenging thing that you encountered?
Oh, I think being excluded.
Okay.
You know, Like, for example, I don't tend to talk about it because it's not a nice thing to talk about. But I share it as reference points, so other people can learn. But yeah, being sent to places and then finding out there's no meetings there,
Yeah.
being directly set up that way, like just to waste my time. And that's why I was just thinking, come on, like that's not right.
Yeah.
So, for example, like I had some like meetings and stuff. Said, oh, you go over there. When I went there was no meeting because everyone was meeting in another room.
Wow.
That happened. It happens, and it's just like, as a kid, it's different, but as an adult,
Yeah.
it's disturbing. It's disturbing as an adult because you're like, I get that if you're 14, 13, 15, 16, everyone's messing around, everyone having a laugh, right?
Yeah.
Pranks. I get pranks. But to do that as an adult, where I got sent, to spaces or being locked out of rooms.
Yeah.
So one time was like in our education, I got locked out. They wouldn't open the door. And I just thought it was a glass like room, so I could see them. They could see me, but and it's just not me. It was me and my colleague, by the way. I should point out,
Yeah.
and he's from a similar background.
Yeah.
And I knew why. We knew why. And just thinking to yourself, why did you do that? I mean, I went in there smiling, like, yeah, cool. Like, that's you.
Yeah.
And I learned that from the others, like, growing up, like people got, say racially abused. And then they would come home crying, to their parents, for example, like, oh, this person called me this in school.
Yeah.
And the parents would say to them, like, yeah, so are you that person then? And hold that child, and then child would be like, actually, no, I'm not. So why are you paying attention? And that bit of like education they taught me, from another background, taught me. I'm like, oh, that's quite interesting, their story. So when it came to education being knocked out of certain backgrounds,
Yeah.
and I couldn't grasp it in the sense of like, why are people like that? But it got me. I just understand from a psychological perspective, being curious. That's the only way to protect it. So don't judge. Just saying, interesting why you did that. But yeah, that barriers, being locked out of the rooms and stuff. I think it was one of the. Yeah, it was another college. Like you can see the lip read. Go and open the door. I can see his lip read.
Yeah.
And you can tell some of them. You might have allies in that group.
Yeah.
Who don't believe in this thing. But I could see the sniggering on their face when I was talking in the meeting. You pick up on the body language. You're like, cool. Like if that's you, and
Yeah.
I can't teach you. That's an upbringing problem, man. So being excluded
Yeah.
in these spaces was the biggest barrier. Hence why now it shaped my work to say, no, how can we help now so it doesn't happen to the person? Like my time is gone.
Yeah.
I've been through the trauma.
Yeah.
What can I use for my pain and my own experience to help the others and not get angry about it and think solution wise? And because the other people, they, what's the word? They will not. Sometimes they can't empathize with the situation. They don't have it.
Yeah.
And what you do as an individual, you've got a choice to say, why should that person have respect for you? Like, don't give him that.
Yeah.
Have respect for yourself. Like that's what's going to protect your space, and then you'll attract the right type of energy, and you're like, oh, this guy's all right, like, yeah. And then those people who do those exclusive behaviors, they'll be on the outside learning, looking in and say, yeah. So I think you can do it by leading. It's hard. I mean, it's not an easy thing for anyone listening. It's, there is a lot of resilience training you have to do, but the more civilized you are, the better your health outcome and the better your mental health outcome. Just try to not to. I had this powerful phrase: try to hold on to your reality. So important because people can gaslight you, people can manipulate you, people can distract you.
Yeah.
You know your truth. Speak the truth. Be authentic, because there's no need to lie. There's no need to cover up.
Yeah.
Be transparent. Be consistent. And when you have that, a central dial, you're very likely, you're not going to be pushed in different corners, making you less disoriented.
Oh, that's very powerful. Thank you for sharing. And it's just like you said, it's almost comical how, like if you're a 14-year-old, it's understand, but like you're a full grown adult and you're just like, what's going on here? Like I can obviously see what you're doing, I can understand, but yeah, it's actually like you said, requires a lot of resilience and stuff. Which again, yeah, thank you for sharing that. I feel like that's something which maybe a lot of people, can take away from and learn a bit from. So yeah, thank you for that. And Also, because I don't know about you, but I'm a gym person. Like, I love going to the gym a lot. And you know, I read that you've done a lot of stuff with physical activity, and I was just wondering, like, how does, in your opinion, how do you think understanding psychology can help with like public health or public fitness and stuff like that? And how do we bridge the gap between those two?
No, thank you for reading my work, my interest area. Yeah, I did my PhD in this area around physical activity, and I did it for about 8 years. So I learned a lot about motivation. Um, there are psychosocial predictors, like we know that our social environment can help us to become more active. If there was access to, for example, like bikes and cycles, right, or cycling pathways, if they were safe, we know that we need people with us to feel us more safe. So I think the social environment, psychological is like, yeah, confidence, self-esteem. If you don't know how to ride a bike or someone's going to steal it, you don't want to ride the bike. So we can understand the barriers, particularly around fear and what are the benefits. I think it can be quite a like also age related, like people maturity levels, like when you become older, you realize that the importance of like, yeah, if I do this, this is going to improve my blood circulation and you know um my oxygen supply, and because of my organs need it. But I think when you're young, you're still grasping the world, you're distracted by so many things, you forget about physical activity. But when you're a kid, right, you're physically active in the playground, you're always running around, lunchtime football and all this stuff after school. So this is naturally built in. We don't have to think about it consciously. As we age, our bodies start to become less active because of other things we're doing, and it's not built into our environment, our everyday behavior, basically. So when you were a kid, that's why you have a lot of, when you become an adult, you put on a lot of weight,
Yeah.
because you're becoming less active. So it's how do you really incorporate them? And it is tricky, because what do you do? Do you improve the environment? Do you improve the workspace? Because at the end of the day, the workspace just want you to become a person that's going to, you do things for them. But I would argue and say, well, if you want the person to be productive, you need to give them the best, environment to be in, like when they were kids, so they can really excel. So I think incorporating physical activity is really important.
Yeah.
Psychology is really interesting to understand, I think, because it's the pathway to understanding your other aspects of your health. Physical activity is the one that you don't need much resource. If
Yeah.
your body, if you're able-bodied, meaning you can move,
Yeah.
you can move your body, you can move your legs, and it doesn't mean you have to go for a run. Like I did the London Marathon when I was doing my PhD, and I did that because I thought it was important, because my physical activity, and I was a cross-country runner in school, and it was always a goal of mine. And
Yeah.
so the natural goals of like, training, I didn't go to the gym. I couldn't go to the gym to prepare because I was too busy with studying and stuff like that. So, but made it work. I did a range of races, like half marathons,
Yeah.
to make it happen. So you have to make it work for you. That's one thing I realized, that physical activity has to be personalized. Like, and when you listen to the other professors who work in this area, behavior change,
Yeah.
they talk about physical activity, not just in terms of running, but also things like moving, dancing, for example, like moving the head, or all this stuff, because you're actually moving the body. So one is like burning the calories, but also moving that. So we have, as most people, I think they see physical activity as in the form of traditional, like gym, go for a run. That's what it means. Like, no, we can do this. We can be physically active when we're cooking. Like we're doing this, and so moving parts of the body, and moving that blood around the body.
Yeah.
But in psychology, we use this, what we call a biopsychosocial model, to explain health. So you have the biology, what's happening in your body. So your heart rate and things like that. So how do you measure physical activity? Yeah, you measure the heart rate. You go for a run, all this stuff. So the biological stuff, and then you have the social element. Is like, well, what is in your social environment and the people around you who basically will influence you of being active and not being inactive. Because if you're with a group of people who don't have that, then naturally you're going to be spending time with them.
Yeah.
But if you have people like like as we did after school, playing football in the streets, it's a social environment. So that's what's going to improve. But if you got the biology there, and then the psychological elements, if it's rewarding, you feel good, isn't it, when you scored a goal and you made that nice pass, when you made that nice turn, when you made a team goal. So that's what we call a biopsychosocial model of understanding, and this is the kind of the main approach I took my PhD to understand motivation or physical activity. Let's take a biopsychosocial model approach to explain what this is about. You definitely need the biology. You need to help the body. You're going to treat the body because not everybody is the same. The human body, that is. You need to solve the social environment and appreciate the psychological processes. And then if you bring all of those three things are making what we call health or health behavior like physical activity.
Yeah, 100%. It's definitely interesting to hear you talk about this. Like you said, this is what you did your PhD on, and all the details you've given is like like I've never heard of the psychosocial model, which when I first heard it, I was like, wow, that sounds like 10 words put together. But yeah, it's interesting to hear you talk about it. And like I said, I'm a gym person. I don't know if you are as well, but like you said, you do cross country running and long distance running. All this stuff I'm definitely going to be using, to improve the way I go to the gym and stuff like that. And I'm sure a lot of people listening as well are going to do that because, like with my dad as well, because he did a PhD as well. And every time he speaks about his PhD, it's like you just see his eyes light up and he can go for hours and hours and hours. So it's definitely always interesting to like hear someone speaking about something that they put a lot of work into. So I have one quick question for you. And this is actually a question from someone who listens to this podcast. And they asked, what's the most common misconception people have about psychology, in your opinion?
Common misconception. Yes, it depends on who you ask, like what group of people you ask. It could be ethnicity group, it could be a gender group, like depends. But the most common one, I think, in psychology is that we have the answers about human behavior and we don't. Like we can share, but we don't know. Like we know very little. We are investigating, so I did a lot of research and a lot of teaching and stuff. But that's a big area. Like there's this misconception that we know everything. Like we don't know everything. It's too big to. It's like the internet. It's too big to understand. And the other thing is it's about the profession in itself. Like people think the psychologists don't look like me. And that's the other big one. It's like, yeah, the psychologists don't look like me. So I might be walking through, that guy, a psychologist, like, yeah. So normally I teach with my cap on, like my baseball cap, I teach. And sometimes people get surprised by that. Like, oh yeah, like I'm like, yeah, like I'm not gonna change my identity for you. Like, do you want me to should I change my jacket as well at the same time? Like I will wear, because remember, we are talking to humans, talking about humans. So you have to be a human, and you have to be your human. You have to be your authentic, that being. So I think people tend to see psychologists like think that they're going to appear in one way. But when people like us come, that's just why I think inclusivity is very important. Diversity is very important, because you need to have people like with all sorts of haircuts and styles, and because these are humans, these are people, this is their identity. So how are people going to learn about each other if they're not there in the space? Otherwise, you're learning about one type of human. You're being conditioned one type of human. Like I learned a lot from neurodiverse colleagues. Like people going on neurodiversity. I learned a lot of them. I'm like, oh, so that's how people see the world. You see what I mean? But imagine if those people didn't exist in that space, and I would never come across them. And then I'd be like, you need to fit into those people and see what I mean. So I think something about what I said earlier, but the second point I would place more emphasis on. One is about knowledge. We don't know everything. And the second part is, well, who is psychology? Who represents psychology? And people think that people like us, we don't see him as a psychologist. So that's a big misconception. There's loads of people like us out there, but we need to make him more accessible, and we need to become more visible.
Yeah, Yeah, so it's all about not trying to trap everyone into the box, because so many other ethnic minorities that could be whatever they want to be, could be any type of psychologist as well, which is
Yeah,
interesting that you said that. Yeah.
yeah, and I shared this example. I shared this example before I go, but I shared this example before with a lot of students when I teach them, when they come across. I talk about the importance of connectedness, collaboration. I said, if you think about COVID-19, the vaccination, imagine we had those attitudes. Everyone had that attitude. We don't talk to people. We hate people.
Yeah.
The world would probably not exist today. Our population would probably be extinct. Because we were able to talk to each other, we were able to get the vaccination out. Imagine we had those beliefs and attitudes. I'm not talking to you because you're like this. Two scientists doing that. So he's got the formula, or that person's got the formula, he or she or they got the formula, and the other person's got the other part of the formula.
Yeah.
But they're not talking because we've, as a race, as a human race,
Yeah.
we've positioned ourselves in this way, and therefore now the world will slowly die out.
Yeah.
And this is what I mean about the vulnerabilities and why we shouldn't ever go down that path of division and hatred, because that's a path to destruction. I don't want to live in that. I want to live in the world where I can get along. Do you know what I mean? I want to live in this world, and I want my family to live in this world. What's the matter with you? Like, that kind of thing. Like, what kind of world do you want to live in? Because you're living in it, mate. Like, that kind of thing. So I think it's so important in terms of that importantness of that. We are more connected. The only way we survive is by working together. If you think about this thing about elephants, if the baby elephant, if they become isolated from their caravan,
Yeah.
like their journey, then that baby elephant's completely going to die because they've lost that protection. And this is what I mean about, as a human race, as we move forward, as we evolve as a race and continue to evolve,
Yeah.
the only way to survive is by doing it together. And COVID-19 was the our example, not the historical examples. It was a 2020 example of like, do
Yeah.
you want to survive or do you want to die?
Yeah.
That was the question posed to us as a race at that time, and we chose survival, not dying. It's interesting, isn't it? We all came together.
Yeah.
Things happen so immediately, and I wish I could do that with poverty and crime. Like,
Exactly.
it gave us hope. It gave us hope to say, like, nah, what are you talking about? Like, we've seen it in our time. Don't ever forget that.
Yeah.
It was possible. Yeah. So when people say, oh, it's not possible, I'm like, what are you talking about? It happened 3 years ago. We've done it in a matter of weeks, I believe.
Yeah.
So let's not get it twisted here.
Yeah.
Let's focus. So you need everyday examples and everyday evidence like that
Yeah.
to say, hey, we did it.
Yeah, 100%. It's basically in our hands to perpetuate the survival of our race, and we can do that by just interacting, not having these artificial barriers and stuff like that, which is very powerful, like I said. So, with that being said, I won't take up too much more of your time. Thank you so much, Mr. Jalel. You've helped me so much, not just me but people listening as well. You've spread so much information, which I feel like everyone who's watching is gonna take away from. So, without taking up too much of your time, is there anything you want to plug, like maybe your website or podcast or anything, your channels that you're going to be working on in the near future that the people can connect with you on?
Yeah, I mean, no, thank you so much, Jerry, like, for inviting me. And I think it's such an, when I saw the opportunity to come and speak to you, I was like, yeah, absolutely. It's great that we're asking the question, and that's how we're going to do it. If we don't interact, then how are we going to know? So thank you for providing that space. Yeah, if people want to hear more, the best way is I'm always up for different things. I'll put different contents out. Instead of like getting them to go to like so many different spaces, the best place I get them to connect is like if they go to any of the social media accounts, use at Dr. Jolel, and they'll find me, talking about psychology, talking about different things, and sharing other people's content too. My main aim is just to like, help the other person. If they come across your stuff, like, did it help? Did it hinder them? My main aim is to help them. So if anyone wants to learn more, because I do put out a lot of stuff here and there, it's Dr. Jolo.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. Make sure you guys, go check out Dr. Jolo's content. I'm going to put some links in the description, and there's going to be a prompt at the top right as well. But like I said, thank you again for your time, Dr. Jolo. I hope you have a great day.
No problem. Yeah, just let me know. And if you need anything, just let me know. Yeah, thanks for reaching out, Jerry. And let Chrissy know that we talked and it was great. It was a great discussion. Yeah. So good luck with it. Good luck with it. Keep doing it. Keep there's other people you can invite on. Just keep on doing it. It's great.
Thank you. Thank you so much.